Jamie wasn't always what people, think he is now.
It was a very gruesome case, certainly the most gruesome case I've seen in my career.
I really don't know what was going through his head. I just know what he portrayed.
The amount of rage that would be buried deep down inside of his psyche would be unfathomable.
You would have to be living a double life for that to be true.
Do you know how hard it is to dismember somebody to that extent? Are you shitting me? Like, the cops told me it was the worst thing they've ever seen in their life, and it's going to haunt them till the day they die.
This only happens in the movies, This doesn't happen in real life.
I remember everything. Yeah, I don't forget. I don't forget.
I could trade places with him, I would.
But you didn't kill anyone.
In a way, I did.
Somebody that's that damaged, I don't believe that there's any hope for rehabilitating somebody like that.
How are the police allowing this? I'll even tell you more. Are you going to sugarcoat this?
The idea of Jamie killing somebody else surprises me about as much as the sun coming up tomorrow is going to surprise me. It's just, as long as he's alive, he's going to try to hurt people, try to kill people, and do so in the most sensational way possible.
I've been a crime reporter at KGET in Bakersfield, California for 4 years. Bakersfield, to me, is unlike any other part of the Golden State. We're located in Kern County, just about 100 miles from Los Angeles. But sometimes it could feel like a world away. For one, it's much more conservative and it's tougher on crime than most of California. And in some parts of Kern, there's still that cowboy justice feel. If you go on someone's property, there's a good chance they have a gun and aren't afraid to use it. But there's something else. This county isn't just ridden with crime. It's pretty much every type of crime you could imagine. In Kern County, murder is everywhere, which means, sadly, it takes a lot for a case to stand out to anyone, the public, cops, and reporters alike. But there's one case that I couldn't forget about even if I wanted to. It's consumed me, and frankly, at times tormented me. What I know about the case, or rather, the killer, is a story my station and I have wrestled with for years. We'll get into the reasons why later on. We're sharing this story now because of recent events involving the admitted killer. Whether we like it or not, he's made it impossible for us to turn our backs on this story. We warn you now, this story will be disturbing. I'm Olivia LaVoice. This is The Man with 1,000 Faces.
Hello. Hi, I'm calling from the El Morocco Motel. And I found there's a lady that stays here at the motel, and my cleanup guy went in the room and saw her all stabbed in the back. She's dead, I think.
Oh my gosh, what room is it, sir?
This is room number 19 at the El Morocco Motel.
The victim was Yvette Pina. She was 36 years old, had 6 children, and was essentially a complete stranger to Osuna when he killed her. After his arrest in 2011, Jamie Osuna was the 1% who said yes to an interview.
How do you spell your name?
But that interview, done with another reporter, was brief and typical.
I'm innocent.
He said what they all say. And now, as I sent a second request 6 years later, I realized it was the Friday afternoon before his scheduled Monday morning trial. My chances were slim to none, but it was a rare slow news day. I had time, so why not? And when the facts came back with the yes box checked instead of no, really, I couldn't believe it. I walked into a little room in the jail where 2 guards let him in. To say looking at him was shocking is beyond an understatement. This horrendously violent man I'd heard such vile stories about was surprisingly petite, maybe 120 pounds, maybe 5'6". But his face, looking at Osuna, is like driving past an awful car wreck. You simply can't look away. In the last 6 years, while in jail, he'd managed to tattoo nearly every inch of his face. Some of his latest ink included a satanic pentagram in the middle of his forehead, as well as long Joker eyes to match his Joker smile tattoo, hence his nickname as Batman's nemesis come to life. There was something particularly unsettling about his eyes, something that took his appearance from shocking to frightening.
Well, don't take it personal if I don't answer all the questions that you go.
No one ever does. The only way I can describe this moment is to say I was flat out freaking out inside. Moments after Jamie was led into the room, before our cameras were rolling, he looked at me and immediately said, "Well, you know I did it, right?" Something to that effect. Basically, he made it perfectly clear he was no longer claiming his innocence.
Okay, Jamie Osuna, Jamie-Osuna. I was born 3/7/88.
So you know when people see this, of course they're going to say you're a monster. Is that a fair assessment?
A monster? They can call me what they will, but I guess you can say a devil as will. So be a monster, yes, I guess. I don't recognize myself as one, but...
So if you don't recognize yourself as a monster, what do you recognize yourself as?
I recognize myself as one who is not afraid to indulge himself without the consequences and let society mold him into his laws change, and as society change, people change with it. I'm self-made and I'm proud of it.
Sheriff's Office. Hi, I called maybe like 3 or 4 hours ago regarding my estranged husband breaking a restraining order.
Okay.
I was just wondering if anyone was on their way or...
Yes, ma'am. It looks like your call should be the next call up for service.
He's threatening to kill me, and I'm terrified.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
He's threatening to kill me and all my children.
Do you know where he's at right now?
No, I'm terrified. I don't know what to do.
911, where's your emergency?
I'm terrified. I have a little baby here.
What's his name?
Jamie Osuna. There's already a warrant for his arrest. For terror. He's been telling me.
Okay, but he's not there, right?
He's driving up and down my street.
911, how can I help you?
Yes, hi ma'am. Is there any way we could get an officer out here? My aunt is like terrified. She's crying over here.
Okay.
We got voice support and he just called and I'm just a nephew. This dude is no joke.
Jamie was taunting her, stalking her. He'd be outside her window, but gone before any law enforcement ever showed up, making Jane look delusional, paranoid. But then, Jamie called her and said this.
First thing I was on, watch the news, bitch. I killed the woman at the Morocco.
5 days after Jane made that 911 call, she turned on the news.
Police are being very tight-lipped as they continue their investigation into what may have happened inside one of these motel rooms. We do know that yesterday afternoon, an employee found 37-year-old Yvette Pina dead at the El Morocco motel.
They told me that they had found her body, that this was a homicide investigation. It was like my head just started ringing and spinning, and I never would have in a million years imagined or fathomed that somebody would take her life.
Since my mom passed. No, since my mom was murdered. I have this envy in me. And I envy people with moms. Like when I see a girl and her mom, or like if I go get my nails done, and like the other day I went and this girl and her mom were in there and they were picking out nail colors, and then I got so mad I just walked out. I can't have that. I can't ever look at my phone and see my mom's calling.
To this day, they ask me if I can go back in time and change anything. Will I? No, I will not. Even in this case, in this murder case, if I can go back and change it, I will do it again and over again. And if I'm released, I'll probably end up back here with the same thing.
My phone lit up. It was Yvette Pina's sister. she had a horrifying message to relay. Jamie Osuna had done exactly what he told me he would 2 years earlier. He'd continue to kill as long as he was alive, even from behind bars. For the first time since his 2011 arrest, Jamie Osuna had been given a cellmate, and 24 hours later, a prison employee came across a scene they'll no doubt never be able to erase from their minds.
The cops told me it was the worst thing they've ever seen in their life, and it's gonna haunt them till the day they die.
Osuna had beheaded the cellmate, among other things, and posed his body in a shocking manner. He'd written all over the prison walls in blood. One of the messages read, quote, "I am a man with 1,000 faces."
This is Global Tellink. You have a prepaid call from an inmate at the California State Prison, Corcoran.
This was a setup from the jump, and a man lost his life in the most gruesome way I've ever heard of in my life.
I'm going to tell you, based on the fact that maybe my son is going to grow older and he is going to be able to look at all this so he can backtrack and see my mentality as of right now. I've been a cutter since I was 12 years old, all of my arms since I was 12. And I've been that type of person where as I grow older and older, I seem to get more disconnected emotionally and physically to things.
Why add me in the mix? Why get married, have a child? You see what I'm saying? If killing someone is the ultimate, better than drugs, sex, anything, he's kind of contradicting himself, because why try to live normal for whatever amount of time?
If I was this crazy psycho murderer, then how come I didn't kill her then when I have so much against her? Supposedly I'm gonna do life and I'm gonna do life over some woman I didn't know.
But then detectives told him that witnesses noticed something about the murder victim.
People think that this woman is probably my wife because the resemblance, the age, and so forth like that.
A point that intrigued investigators.
She kind of looks like your wife.
Psychologically, you could put it together.
So,
why?
Rage and anger that you have towards your wife, you took out on her because of the resemblance.
I didn't know her. I met her, I was introduced to her. I met her like one time, then I came back the next night and I seen opportunity, no one's there.
How much Jane had to do with Jamie's decision to kill Yvette Pina, we may never know.
That's why he's such a mystery. If he just enjoyed killing, why didn't he just kill me?
Jane says that question has haunted her.
I should have really been dead instead of Yvette, and I had a lot of guilt. Very few people are born evil. It's rare. I believe it's nurture over nature with Jamie.
That was Jamie's ex-wife. Is her take on it really possible? Can a baby be brought into the world, pure, innocent, not knowing hate, and be made into a monster? Or was this always his path? Was he born with evil in his mind?
I had an abusive stepfather, and my mother was hardly never around, and she would follow my stepfather, so I was always thrown to the streets.
The truth is, most cases, it's a mix of the environment intersecting with some biological predispositions.
The kids would be eating dinner, and I would serve the kids, and he wouldn't let James have his, and then would take away his plate, and then have Jamie sit there and watch his two kids eat while he sat there with nothing.
And she says when Jeff finally let Jamie have something to eat,
he made him eat like a dog. Just put his plate on the floor and make him eat on the floor.
How did you deal with that?
I didn't deal with it too well. I didn't know how to deal with it because, like I said, by that time, the abuse had turned on me as well.
A parent, particularly a mother, is supposed to be the ultimate protector for her child, who she carried in her womb, presumably fed for all those years. And for her to abandon him, as he perceives that she did, would fuel a tremendous rage and desire for revenge.
The whys, the hows, and what ifs, which to some people may not matter, but to my news station, it does. But as far as making Jamie into a victim, that's not how we see him. If there was ever any chance of that, it went out the window as soon as I heard the story of a true victim, Yvette Pina.
You talked about her being a mother figure. She was more than that. She was my protector. I feel partially to blame because of where she was at in her life and because of her addiction and how it led her to live in the El Morocco Motel. A few months after I was born, I was hospitalized. And I wasn't supposed to survive. My mom, when she had me, was dating a drug dealer. He was able to provide for her and provide for my sister and to provide for me to the extent that I got better and I was going to survive, but I was still needing to be monitored. I was on machines, and the machines were able to be inside of our home because he paid whatever cost it was to bring them into the home. I was a newborn. My sister was 10. And part of the cost to have the machines in the home wasn't only a financial cost. It turned into being the cost of my sister's innocence. My mom's boyfriend began sexually abusing her and would threaten that if she didn't allow him, then he wasn't going to continue to pay for my machines to keep me alive. And if she didn't allow him to do it to her, then he would do it to me. So at 10 years old, she allowed it. And it went on for 2 years. She had finally had enough and she spoke up. And during his arrest and his court stuff and gathering evidence and the medical stuff, the medical examiner or the doctor who examined her, he asked my mom if he could examine me. And upon his examination, he found out that I had been abused as well. And upon learning that, my sister lost herself. And eventually, she started self-medicating. She turned to alcohol and then marijuana, and then from marijuana to whatever else.
I tried to find the man Danielle said was her mother's boyfriend. This is it. It proved to be difficult, despite his being a registered sex offender with an address listed on the Megan's Law website. I went to that address. I saw someone come out. Turn it up. Hello? The man who answered the door said he was the brother of the man I was looking for. He said his brother didn't live with him and didn't know where I could find him or how I could reach him. The brother recalled the molestation case. He said he was in prison himself then, so he couldn't tell much about it, other than he didn't believe his brother was capable of it. California prisons, however, did confirm that in 1987, matching the time frame Danielle gave me, the boyfriend was given a 3-year prison sentence for a felony sex crime involving a child. When Osuna entered Yvette's motel room that November night, the two were strangers. Strangers who were once both wounded children, born into complicated families with young, perhaps ill-prepared mothers who had difficult backgrounds themselves. These two strangers grew up in a rough neighborhood ridden with poverty, both with abusive men in their childhood homes, both feeling, to some extent, they didn't get the protection they needed from their own mothers. These hardships undoubtedly impacted both of them. How exactly their paths crossed as adults, no one can really say. But once the two of them were in that motel room, only one of them became a monster.
It was more of a, oh, this is an opportunity, because I did crimes before that they don't know about. So this has just happened to be the one that was just like, all right, this is the rock bottom. This is time. This is it.
Have you killed anyone else?
Yes.
How many others?
2.
Who are they?
Can't tell you, but you will find out. Because I always got to have an ace in the hole.
Was he telling me the truth when he said he's responsible for 2 unsolved murders? If 2 murders could be solved, we need to know.
I've tried getting that information from him. I tried finding out.
This is Jamie's brother, Kurt, explaining how when it came to Jamie being a cold-blooded killer, he wanted to hear that come from Jamie himself.
I just wanted to know if my brother was capable of doing what everyone's saying that he did. I tried asking him, but he never said anything. He didn't even answer my question.
There are other murders, though, that took place during the short windows of time when Jamie lived free among us that I wonder about.
A farm worker's deadly discovery this morning has the Sheriff's Department now investigating a homicide. Sheriff's officials say that the body of an adult female was found on this access road inside a vineyard near Wheeler Ridge and Sebastian Road just south of Arvin.
That little news clip you hear is pretty much as far as the story went. An unidentified woman murdered and dumped in a vineyard. As we've already told you, murder, especially murders in orchards and vineyards, are not uncommon in Kern County. So this particular case of the woman found on March 29, 2011, was never reported on again. Until 7 years later, after I got a tip from a source while we stood next to each other, bored at some ceremony at the courthouse. The source told me the murdered woman in the vineyard had never been identified, likely because she'd been decapitated. You may recall this is a case we briefly told you about in episode 1. Here are some of the investigators that worked the homicide.
Something this gruesome is very unusual.
This is one of those types of murders and murder investigations that you come across maybe once in an entire career, maybe never. The blood had been drained from the body. The crime scene itself was very clean. It looked like somebody had taken a mannequin, removed the head of the mannequin, and then just posed the mannequin on a dirt road. Completely nude. She had been decapitated, probably between 40s or 50s, Caucasian or light-skinned Hispanic.
Could Jamie have been her killer? Going back to the letters Osuna sent the district attorney, in 2013, he mailed a letter with a cutout of 4 women from an ad in a magazine. In his usual fashion, he drew Joker smiles and stab wounds on the women. He also writes first or last names to the victims I have killed, and focus on the names. The names Richard, Betty, Carlos, and Donald are written next to the cutout of the female models. Underneath the cutout, he writes, "They're in Arvin and Lamont?" ? I try not to read too much into anything, but I gravitate towards his mention of Arvin and Lamont. As the 3 women whose cases we've mentioned were all found in rural areas just outside Arvin and Lamont.
I mean, my first reaction was, how did they end up in the same cell?
There was a weapon located inside the cell. It looked like it had been manufactured from some sort of razor that may have been issued. It had some string around it, so that's the only weapon that was located.
Since the March homicide, reporter Amber Frias and I have asked CDCR officials a series of questions about the case. Amber requested the list of welfare checks done on Romero and Osuna between March 7th through March 9th, the time frame we believe the pair were in a cell together. CDCR officials said those records are exempt from public disclosure. But when I asked if they were investigating any potential misconduct with prison officials in connection to Romero's homicide, they responded, "It is under investigation." So throughout my research on the homicide, the only people who've claimed to know anything and were willing to talk to me are not officials. They're inmates and inmates' families.
I mean, in my opinion, ma'am, it was a setup. Yeah, it was a setup. He's not liked by the guards in here. And in my professional opinion, and I'm a very smart individual, they thought that the guy was going to go in there and beat up Jamie. And that's not what happened. Jamie was ready.
Did he tell you why he did it?
He wants to go to death row.
Why?
He just thinks it'll be better for him.
The investigator says since Jamie's murder arrest and being admitted to prison in 2017, he'd never had a cellmate until Luis Romero. whether a prison official really said this to Billy the inmate.
Hey, your buddy Osuna, I got that special celly for him. Don't bitch up.
I don't know, and I'm not sure we ever will. Regardless, I have wondered what changed for Osuna to be given a cellmate then, and why Luis Romero. Like Osuna, Romero had spent most of his life behind bars.
We're here because, for us, Luis, his family, he's more than just another prisoner, another victim of Osuna. He was eligible for parole soon, and my mother and my sister and I always hoped to see him once back home, but that hope is dead.
The Romero family has a lot of questions. How is he able to allegedly torture Romero, mutilate his body, and decorate the cell in such a horrific, gory manner while avoiding detection? Jamie's ex-wife weighs in on that.
Based on your experience working in prison, are you surprised that Jamie was able to fully decapitate the cellmate and mutilate him the way he did?
They're supposed to be checking the inmates, I believe it's every 15 to 30 minutes on night shift. There's no way he did that in 15 to 30 minutes.
Nobody cares because they're already viewed as dangerous level 4 inmates.
This is the sister of an inmate who is housed in the Corcoran SHU in Building 4A, where she says her brother actually saw the crime scene. I'm not sure I'd believe this if she hadn't had details about the scene that were accurate.
He does find it kind of odd, and he does feel like it was a setup. He did state to me that guy, Romero, had just got there. 24 hours hadn't even passed, and he just had arrived to that prison when they put him with Osuna. I'm not surprised that this has happened there because that prison is known for that,
Now, I wouldn't say Corcoran is known for COs staging inmate fights, but it has had a bad reputation for it because of incidents from decades ago. In 2000, 8 Corcoran prison guards went on trial accused of setting up inmate gladiator fights, an issue that was highly publicized at the time. Jamie's defense investigator says he also had heard the same stories we did about Osuna having conflict with a prison official who'd allegedly made a comment about Romero being a special celly. The typically overly animated Jamie Osuna seemed catatonic as he walked into the courtroom, eyes straight ahead. His attorneys are currently fighting to get him out of Corcoran. They think he needs a level of mental health care they say Corcoran can't give him. And as they begin to prepare for the death penalty trial, they say they have over 10,000 pages of information and evidence to go through. It will likely be years before a jury ever hears any evidence and has to decide what to do about Jamie Osuna. In the meantime, Billy the inmate tells us life is already different for Osuna behind prison walls.
Are people scared of him?
No. He's looked down upon because of the crime.
Whatever people do in life, they have to pay for what they do in life, anything wrong they do. But that's separate from how I still feel about my son. I still love him. He's still my son. How do you stop loving your child?
Michelle says she can't imagine the pain the mothers of Jamie's victims feel every day.
No parent should have to receive their child pieces.
I do unto others what I expect them to undo unto me. For instance, I'm admitting this and telling you this, right? So my inevitable would be death row, get the needle, maybe an inmate might get a hold of me, kill me, I might get a hold of the inmate, he might kill me. Maybe I might get life in prison, life without the possibility of parole and get 100 and something years. I'm still gonna have contact with somebody, the act is still gonna be committed upon me or upon them. I do accept it if they do it to me, what I did to my victims. I do not see that there will be no problem with it.
The act will still be committed upon me or upon them. What will happen next for Osuna? Only time will tell.